This is the theme song. Okay.
Chippendales, Rescue Rangers.
No, quarantine episode 3, 4, something like that.
4.
We're pros at this quarantine thing.
Oh yeah.
In fact, every single
If
episode,
they gave out gold medals for it, we would get them all.
we've only done this show in person together once, and it was in a park, which is such a faux pas right now.
No, we've done 2. Remember, we did one in my living room.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So we've done 2 total. But yeah, that's pretty crazy.
But yeah, this is a quarantine show.
I mean, when I came to visit you up there, I can't believe we didn't record something. That would have been the perfect place to do an episode.
Yeah, that's true. Oh.
I didn't really think about it though.
So what's the state of the world right now? New York is blowing up with disease, right? They are.
Yeah.
So it's out of control. The hospitals around Manhattan and Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx are beyond capacity, I think. I saw some videos where there are beds and chairs in the hallways, and just it's pretty gnarly.
Which is really scary because Cuomo's like, I don't need 5,000. I need 30,000 because we're not even close to hitting the peak yet. And I was just like, whoa, because if it's this scary right now and you haven't even hit the peak yet, or he doesn't think he's hit the peak yet, that's pretty nuts. And LA apparently is getting bad, but I'm in LA and I'm not really noticing it, but everybody keeps on texting me and calling me saying, it's becoming a hot spot. It's becoming a hot spot. Like, are you okay? Like, blah, blah. And I'm just like, really? I'm not hearing about it. So I must be on Twitter too much and not following the right person on Twitter.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Like Noah's all about the grand scale numbers. And so Noah Smith, longtime guest, longtime friend of the pod.
Friend of the show. Yes.
He's always posting about national and international numbers, and so I'm not really seeing anything from LA. And then the other time I'm just playing video games, so I'm not seeing anything there.
Well, I imagine that most of the information comes from the hospitals where people are. So, yeah, I don't know. Up here, here's the thing. Okay, let's get real. So I had to go be in public yesterday. I went to go run an errand and get some food. And most people are not really quarantining. Most people, at least out there, I mean, a lot of people are doing a great job staying home in their houses and not going to work and not going out and not meeting with friends. But I went for a walk today to get outside the house, and there were teenagers at the park, like hanging out on the swings, like touching everything, like holding each other, all this stuff. Like, people are not taking this seriously at all.
Yeah. And I saw that too.
And like last week, there's, news about like, the first beautiful day we had, everybody was in the park playing, and like nobody was, some people were keeping their distance, but most people were playing like, touch football and stuff, and
fucking idiots.
And yesterday when I was out, I noticed the same thing. I went to go pick up food at like a walk-up restaurant, and people were like ready to jump in line right behind me as I was ordering. It's like, dude, back up, like, And then of course, like the thing where like I gotta sign my name with my finger on an iPad that everyone else has touched, and I don't know if they're cleaning it. And then I looked in the windows, and like there's like maybe 1 or 2 of the people in the kitchen wearing a mask, but most of them weren't. Ugh. And I'm not saying this to make you, paranoid about getting food. Everyone needs to get food, but it's just a fact that some people are not taking this seriously. And I think, and I don't know why, either they haven't gotten the information, they haven't been properly scared, or they're idiots, or they assume that they're already going to get it. They've already been exposed. It's just going to do its thing. And they shouldn't take care of themselves, which is very irresponsible, of course, because we all know that this is not about the young people in the world dying. This is about the elderly and the sick who are going to take the brunt of this.
But it's not about that. That's a trope that has thankfully slowly been eradicated. So let's clear that up right now.
Okay.
They just launched the numbers for America, for the U.S. People under 55, between 22 and 55, make up 45% of the people in the hospital right now. So
Damn.
people over 55 make up 55%. So this is not affecting old people.
Yeah, no, of
So-
course not.
They just have a higher death rate.
Yeah,
but
and
but people are getting, like, people our age are getting hospitalized left and right,
Well,
and a decent sized percentage of them are dying.
That's the
So-
thing. Is like people go, "Oh, it's the flu. I've had the flu before. It's like not supposed to be that
Yeah.
much worse than the flu I've had as a kid or whatever." And I don't think that's true either. I think it's supposed to be pretty darn gnarly, at least for some people. I think some people
Yeah.
have been talking about how their symptoms haven't been that bad. But the bottom line is the whole point of this quarantine is to not spread. Is to not
Yeah.
spread this disease. Is to get it so the hospitals don't get overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Because
did you hear? So the new
hold
stats
on,
came out.
The thing is, and people need to hear this because hopefully all of our listeners are smart enough to know that this is why. But right now our hospitals are overwhelmed. So people who need heart transplants or lung transplants or liver transplants can't get them because the hospitals aren't doing anything. If you break your arm skateboarding right now, then good luck getting it fixed at an emergency room because you're
Yeah.
not even going to want to go near an emergency room because everyone there is dying of the flu.
Yeah.
So this is the way our system breaks down if we don't actually kind of work as a team to fix it. So
Yeah.
anyway, what were you about to say?
So Italy just launched numbers today, and let me confirm. And I tweeted about it, but let me just confirm it. So Italy overall, they've had 86,500 documented cases. Those are just documented, that they've actually tested. Of those, 10,950 have recovered. 9,134 have died.
So it's like 10% of them have died. Did I do that rough math right? I mean, it's like,
More than 10%. Sorry, more than 10% have died. But that's just it. So like right now of 86,000, only 20,000 are done. And those
Yeah.
done, it's more or less 50-50. You either die or you come out.
well, I
And
don't
the
know
rest
if-
are all
yeah.
like, that's crazy. That's
That's-
fucking crazy right now. That right now, if you have it, you have a 50-50 chance of dying or surviving.
I'm not sure people necessarily understand the numbers. You hear a number like, 100,000 people have died. It's kind of like, well, I mean, I can't count that high really. So it must just be a lot. But when you think like, okay, 54% of the people in California are projected to get it. That means one out of every two people that you know is going to be sick. That's
Yeah.
that puts it in perspective for me. It's like, oh, okay. Like out of 100 people, I'm going to know several out of 100 people who will die of this. And that's scary.
If I know 100 people, 54 is supposed to get it, and probably 5 of those are going to die.
Yeah, 5 or 10. Yeah, if it's like the Italy numbers. And that's scary. Like, have you thought, I don't know if we should think about this, but have you thought about when this starts to emotionally hit our country? Because right now people are still playing at the park, meeting up with their friends, just doing whatever. I mean, they don't have to go to work, so
I don't think they're going to take it seriously until Donald Trump shuts the fuck up. Because every day he is just confusing everybody.
I guess so, but I mean, I really like the young people in California. Those kids I saw at the park today. Are they really listening to Donald Trump? No, they're not. They don't. I don't think they. care.
No. But I think that they're listening to the people who are regurgitating his information on because every single radio announcer in podcaster and TV station is playing what he says out loud. And then they say, "Oh, Donald Trump thinks it'll be." Everybody will be able to go back to church for Easter weekend. They just keep repeating that over and over again. And they question, like, no, do you agree with it? Blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of like what they hear. That's the first thing they hear.
It's just insane to me.
And it's just like, what Easter weekend? Dude, that's like 3 weeks away.
That's
I don't know.
If you have coronavirus right now, like that's your incubation period. You might have it by Easter. I mean, like basically.
It's so nuts, dude. I just don't understand why.
We had all this opportunity to prepare for this when we saw it happening in China.
Yeah.
We actually should have learned from the SARS epidemic, because that was kind of like a fire drill, dress rehearsal for this.
We should have learned from H1N1.
Yes, and
swine flu, because it actually happened here and 1,000 people died here.
Yeah, and so like we had an opportunity in January to take some steps toward this, and we didn't. And we have some steps to maybe prevent it from getting extremely bad here. And I don't know.
No, I mean, at this point, the only thing we can do is actually lock people in their homes, like China did. At this point, it's just too late. There's no like this whole social distancing, this whole testing thing. It's not. At this point, it's too, especially in the bigger cities. Mm-hmm. Like you got to catch that. You can do the testing and the social distancing and the quarantine, but that's the thing. So like people are like, oh well, let's just do what South Korea did. South Korea. Was it South Korea, Singapore, Taiwan? They were monitoring people and they were catching people at a club and they were fining them like $30,000.
Wow, I heard that Taiwan, as soon as they heard about this virus, they stopped all incoming flights from China. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I heard. I don't mean to spread rumors, but I think they learned from SARS. And
I mean, I think that's. In my mind, that's kind of the dumb thing, and this is what I get frustrated with. People like, oh shit, China has a hot spot. Let's shut down all things from China. Not understanding how viruses spread, because how many people were in Wuhan that weren't Chinese and that were there for work, and they all went home to their different countries, and say we're going to shut down China. Well, okay, but what about Italy? What about France? What about Australia? What about, it's like all these places that have these hot spots as well. I mean,
it doesn't work. I mean, well, I guess it does work, but it doesn't. No, actually, it works.
It doesn't.
It keeps your country from being severely affected. Yes, but it doesn't mean that you get to save your citizens that are in China. I work at a school. I teach at a school where a lot of the students come from China. I had 2 students that couldn't make it back in time for my class this year because their flights had been canceled from China.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and you have people that are, if we cancel flights, people are really going to freak out because everyone's going to need to get home to see their family that's dying of coronavirus, which is that's another big problem too.
Yeah. I mean, they should have just shut down all flights for 2 weeks and just said, hey, we're shutting down all flights for 2 weeks. But I mean, I guess you can't talk a ton of shit because Taiwan seems to have avoided the brunt of it. But it's also because not only did they shut down some flights from hotspot cities, but I don't know if they did it for all of China. I think, like, I know South Korea just did it for Wuhan.
Oh, really?
They didn't do it for all of China.
I thought they even canceled connecting flights, but I'm not sure.
I think in the very, very beginning they started off with just Wuhan, and they said nobody from Wuhan coming over here right now. But what they were doing is they were testing everywhere. They had somebody out with a thermometer, like on every single street corner. Every time you went onto a bus, every time you went onto a subway, anytime you went into a building, there was somebody there testing you.
If you had
if you had a fever,
wow,
they sent you to a quarantine zone.
Man,
they didn't send you home. They sent you to a quarantine zone.
Can you imagine the freedom fighters in the U.S. though, screaming, "This is a lockdown."
Yeah, and that's just it. It's like you can't please Americans. Americans just are like, they are they're like 3-year-olds. They get something and they want something else. They get that and they want the next thing. They get that. It's just like this idea of like quote unquote freedom. It's like, what does that mean? There's no such thing as freedom because you have an obligation to somebody at any given point in your life.
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
one person's freedom is another person's responsibility. Yes.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I think that I don't know what it is. I actually don't want to talk too much about this, but I think that I don't know what is the tradition of hating your government in the U.S. because it's there. I mean, we hate our president. The government is an imposition on us. Maybe it's just that's where we came from. Like the Americans, not the people that were here before, but I mean, we were fleeing a government. So maybe that's just always going to be in our blood. Flee.
Yeah, I think it's just like just a general social distrust of authority.
Yeah.
And
That's how your
our
country was
entire
born.
Constitution, but our entire Constitution is built around that. That's why we have 3 separate branches of government, and like no, it's, and the funny thing is, it's the conservatives who have been slowly trying to weed that out and like give the president more power, and like William Barr, like I don't want to get too deep into it, but the Justice Department under Bush, the Justice Department under Trump, they've been trying to allow more presidential authority. And what pisses me off about neoliberals is they're like, okay, because we're going to be president next, most likely, and we'll have all this authority. And I'm like, yes, but that doesn't, that's not good overall.
Yeah. So, is this good for Bitcoin? It's just the question that this crypto podcast should be asking.
One of the Winklevi twins tweeted, "Bitcoin is the cure for unlimited printed money." And it's just like, come on, man.
Man, the memes are just
don't talk about cures right now.
Out of this world.
It's just kind of not
cure.
too classy.
Yeah, the panacea.
Yeah,
it's so funny to me how I mean the crypto crowd, like. Any opportunity to shoot a money printing meme is just like, oh yes, here we go. I get to unleash the money printing meme that I've been saving up all this time. Yeah,
I fucking hate that.
So,
oh my god,
I love it. I think it's creative and interesting, but like, it's what I don't like is it's spreading this idea that the government just prints money because they can. I don't really know where I haven't read the stimulus bill, so I don't really know where this $2 trillion is coming from. The question of how are you going to pay for that does kind of come up. And if it's, I mean, like, have you read it? Do you know what's going on? Are we going to get taxed for this later, or what? Are we taking it out of a military fund or something?
The $1,200 is in advance on next year's tax return.
Okay, so everyone's sitting here thinking, "Oh my God, the government's just going to print money and give it to us." And some people are saying that's awesome because I'll have money, and then some people are saying that's bad because money printer go burr. But it's not. That's not the case for either of them. You're not getting free money. It's the money that you're going to pay in taxes.
Yeah, no, I mean, like they just, I mean, you don't have to pay taxes on it. Somebody's like, you have to pay taxes on this, and it's just like. And from everything I've read, you don't have to, but obviously send us a link if you have a different readout. So I was told, what I read online was like, if you were going to get $1,200 next year, instead they're going to give you $2,400, but just give you the other $1,200 right now. Right. So they're giving you more in taxes back.
I see. Okay.
And that's coming from selling bonds. And so and we talked about it with Noah when Noah was on here last time, like how the Fed works and how the Fed creates accounts.
How it doesn't just print money, yes.
It doesn't just print money. It's doing it. It's selling bonds and then buys the bonds back and then deletes those accounts. So it's just like, it's not long-term money. It's creating money, but it's for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So it's like a credit card. They're not giving you cash. They're not printing money to give you that money. They're loaning you the money and then you pay them back, and then all of a sudden it's gone. It's like it's never existed.
So yes, keep an eye out. I don't know when that money is coming, but hopefully it is a relief for a lot of people. If you're renting, then keep an eye out for any sort of stimulus that goes towards mortgages and property owners, because that should somehow trickle down to you, at least in terms of relief. But no, it doesn't.
I doubt it.
Well, I mean, I would think, like, if I had a landlord that was getting a break on his mortgage, I'd call him up and say, "Hey, Like,
Yeah, but he's under no legal obligation to do anything for you. He can just tell you to fuck off.
really, is that true? So, like, if that's the
Absolutely.
case, there'll probably be a rent strike.
There needs to be. I mean, there should have been a rent strike last week.
But I mean, that's only if, well, yeah, I don't know if that is true. If landlords don't have to pay their mortgages, if they get an extra year or whatever, then yeah, then renters should get a break, and they should
No, I mean, there's
strike.
nothing in there. There's nothing in the bill right now about mortgage, like freezing mortgages. But what people have been saying is there needs to be a mortgage freeze, a rent freeze, an across the board freeze on paying for the place you live.
Yeah, if there's a work freeze right now, there's got to be a socialistic way that we can freeze everything. Like, I mean, yeah, can we just hold off on the capitalism for like just a couple months? That's what I think.
I just don't get it. Like, I mean, I'm not sure what they expect people to do. If the average person doesn't have $400 in savings, how do you expect them to pay rent for 2 months without working?
Well, hopefully the average working person is thinking about this kind of big picture too. I think that most people are just thinking, "Oh man, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be out of work. What am I going to do?" Wouldn't it be really nice if we lived in a world where like we actually had some trust in our government that we would be taken care of? God, that would be so awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
I just don't see that happening.
Not in America, because then they might take my guns away.
Yeah.
So as far as crypto goes, the sell-off that we saw like last week, a couple weeks ago, whenever it was, that kind of big daily candle
Yeah.
during that was basically that was synced right up with the stock market, and it was just the big coronavirus dump, basically, which we know now. I mean, and we kind of had an idea back then that stockholders had been looking for opportunities to sell their stocks. I mean, we know that there were even government officials that sold their stocks in when they heard that there was collusion there, and with all the CEOs leaving last year and all this stuff, people have knowing that this is my conspiracy theory, by the way. Like, let me just put that out there. The market's been at an all-time high for a long time, so people are looking for an opportunity to sell. They're not going to sell unless there's some sort of catalyst that's going to be like, oh, we can blame a crash on this, and coronavirus is perfect. So that to me is like people are trying to leave their positions, sell their stocks, get out. Finally, the American politicians are getting out, and then a big old dump. Now, why did Bitcoin crash at the same time? My guess is that because a lot of the banks own crypto now, and they're cashing in on that as well, which is kind of scary if that's true, because will they be buying back? Have they been propping up the market? How much of this is Tether propping up the market? And who's buying and selling now that we've already had that dip? And yeah, so it's I don't think, I've heard people ask the question, is Bitcoin now coupled to the stock market? I don't think it is. What do you think, Michael?
I mean, I don't see it right now, but part of it is. I think everything above 4,000 probably is, because you saw it hit that plateau, and it just wouldn't, or that one line in the sand, and it wouldn't go below that. It might still go there, but I mean, I've heard that it got lower than it should have because of BitMEX, because there was that run on BitMEX.
Right. Well, and that's always an excuse, isn't it?
It's always an excuse. And then, but yeah, it's the whole thing of like, of course, if you have institutional investors coming in, they're going to be the first ones to leave in a down market, because they're buyers and sellers. They're not hodlers. Mm-hmm. And the idea that we can expect Fidelity or anybody like that to be, quote unquote, a hodler is ridiculous and childish and just naive, because these are the people who would sell to their fucking like dying grandmother as long as they could take it off their portfolio sheet.
Yep.
You know, so it's like, and in their mind, that's the most, why am I blanking on the word? Lots of ups and downs. Holy shit.
Volatility.
Volatility. Historically, cryptocurrency has been way more volatile than the stock market. So that's the first thing they're going to sell.
Yep, probably.
So, you know, and if that's 40% of the market, then we're going to see a 40% drop overall. And it went from roughly 9 or 10,000 and now it's back to 6,000.
Yeah. There's
just above 6,000. So that kind of seems about right. I mean,
yeah, that does sound right. I'm of the belief that Bitcoin has always been heavily manipulated. And
Yeah.
I think that the stock market is also heavily manipulated too. It's not inconceivable that that from now on the price of Bitcoin might depend on it being an asset of the stock market. Not that it's actually part of New York Stock Exchange or anything, but that there are trading funds that include it in their portfolios. So
Yeah.
with that in mind, are the Bitcoin whales still in enough control to keep the value up and to pump it and dump it the way they like to do? I don't know.
I mean, I think it's scary because right now they have even more power to do it. Now that institutional money got out, and if they're the ones, and if the whales are the ones who bought most of it up, that means that they have even more ability to, you know, pamp it and dump it.
Yeah, no, totally.
So-
And with the halving coming up, to me, I think that's just kind of a meme. It's I don't see any reason for why the halving should have anything to do with the price of Bitcoin going up. In fact, I see it more as something that would make Bitcoin go down in value.
Yeah.
If the
Absolutely.
miners are making less money, that's not good. You could possibly have miner capitulation.
Which historically has happened for the first month or two, if I'm not mistaken, after every happening. And
Oh,
it just
really?
happened with Litecoin.
Okay. So,
And I think even BCH, it's happening with BCH right now. All the miners have switched over to BTC because of the happening with BCH. Isn't that? Didn't I just read that?
I don't know. I didn't read that. But so analysts will look at the history of Bitcoin and be like, well, every halving it's done this and it's done this. But I don't know. I just don't really buy it. I don't buy it because, well, I mean, if Bitcoin has been manipulated since its inception or since close to the beginning, then why not manipulate it around the halving? It makes sense. It's an event that you can kind of blame things on if things go right or wrong or whatever, which means that there's no reason why whales would want to pump the price right before the block reward lowers.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't.
Well, I think
seem
the
like it should
idea is
be-
you want to pump the price and then sell at the top, and then as soon as the happening hits, it's going to dump because it costs because you're getting half as much.
Right. Okay. And if that's
And
the
then-
case, yeah. So then there might just not be enough dollars in the system and in the economy, in the world economy, to make that happen this time. There might not be enough people who want to take that risk. The people, and this is another thing that we have to realize about crypto and Bitcoin is, okay, Bitcoin's been around for 10 years. That's a long time. That's enough history to look at in terms of technical analysis, fundamental analysis, whatever. But it was born at the bottom of a bull cycle in traditional economies, traditional markets. So,
Bottom of a bear, you mean?
what's that? Bottom.
Bottom of a bear.
Well, I mean, Bitcoin came around right as the stock market was starting to mend itself. So most of Bitcoin's life has existed during a Wall Street bull market.
So, yeah, at the beginning of a bull market.
Yeah. So people who are saying, well, Bitcoin has done this for the past 10 years, so it's likely to continue. It's like, no, well, if we go into a worldwide recession, Bitcoin has never seen a recession before.
Exactly.
So
it's
that's
only lived in a bull market.
Yeah. And so that could flip things around completely. And I think I think I mean, it's incredibly oblivious to not look at the world economic factors when looking at something like Bitcoin. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just,
but that's Bitcoiners in general. They're more or less oblivious to what's happening in the real world.
yeah. Well, the
You know,
price
they're
of,
armchair economists, and economists in general are just, pontificating about what happened yesterday.
if Bitcoin is supposed to go up in value because it's an escape hatch for world currencies, if when Greece's economy collapses and Venezuela and Zimbabwe, it's the Bitcoin is supposed to be the savior. Then we don't
Yeah.
have a whole lot of proof that that is the case. We don't have any proof that that is the case because we've never really seen it happen on a global scale.
Yeah.
Now I
Well,
think
so it's interesting that we interviewed Paul again the second time, and the thing I missed about the first interview that I wish we could have talked about for just a few seconds was he said everybody should dip their toes in Austrian economics and then get out as quick as possible, just to give them a sense of
what does
these
that
people
mean?
are talking about. Because he's saying that it's a ridiculous idea. It's
Yeah.
not based in reality, and it's like it's not sustainable. It's not
I guess so.
successful. It's never been done.
I still don't know what it means though. So
What?
Austrian economics, I just don't. It's like based on sort of an individualistic philosophy, but I don't know what it means what does it mean to dip your toes into Austrian economics? Like, how do you act when you're an Austrian economist besides like a douche
Well,
on Twitter?
they want hard money instead of like digital money. Like
Gold.
they want something like Nano or Bitcoin where there's a specific amount and that's it, and that's all there's ever going to be.
Okay, so an Austrian
So that way
economist
you
wants
can't print
gold.
money and make. So that way, if you can't print money and then make other people's money valued less,
And hard money
it's worth less at that point.
there's a fixed supply.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we already know that wouldn't work, but is that it? Do they believe in other things too? I mean, I imagine they're probably libertarians, right? Like most of them.
Well, I mean, so Austrian economics kind of mainly stems from that point of like
Okay.
fiscally conservative,
Yeah.
kind of like what they were doing with what they did to Greece, what the EU did to Greece, which is just like, we're going to give you this loan, but you can't have health care anymore. You can't have, it's just like they drop the hammer on the country and it completely decimates the country.
Okay.
And then, so they don't realize, and it's what we did forever with Africa. We'd be like, all right, we're going to give you this, this $10 billion of aid. And then you got to pay us back in 10 years. And then what the leader of the country do would just raise taxes to like 40% and just destroy the country. And there'd be zero growth because you got to have taxes, but you can't have too high taxes. Cause that's just, I mean, this is any free market person will tell you that, because like there's a cap on like at a certain point when you tax too much, it slows growth.
Yeah. If everyone's
so
got to
you
worry
can-
about paying taxes, for sure.
Well, so I mean, you can take more from the rich because if I have $10 million, you can take 60% of it, 70% of it, and I'll still have $3 million. And so it's not going to change my day-to-day life of like food, housing, shelter, electricity, that kind of stuff. Like that doesn't change. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't tax enough where it actually starts to stop people, like the average person, from their day-to-day life of like being able to go to the movies once a month and like go to the bar once a week and that kind of stuff. Once you start infringing on that, economies start to slow drastically. If the person can't buy a car every 5 years or every 6 years, that starts to slow the economy, like things like that. So that's why progressive taxation has worked so well in the West, is for so long, is because you're generating the majority of your tax base from the wealthier class, and the lower class, financially speaking, is contributing with sales tax because more or less 100% of their income is being used So they're paying actually a higher percentage of their income in taxes overall because 100% of their money is also being hit with a sales tax.
Okay.
Whereas if a rich person has $1 million and they're only spending $100,000 a year, they're only paying sales tax on $100,000, whereas on 10% of their money. Whereas you or I are spending 100% of our money is being taxed in sales tax as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So Austrian economics dabble in this idea of hard money so you can understand the way currency works. Basically, is what Paul was saying. Just
Get out
basically.
right away.
Believe in something very extreme to like form your identity or something, and then realize that that's not the best way to do things. I think that's actually pretty good advice.
Yeah.
I
I think
go ahead.
any extreme is interesting to talk about and dip your toes in for a few minutes, but then get out and move to a less extreme.
Try anarchy. Try
Yeah.
Try communism or something. I don't know.
Nihilism do nihilism for a week.
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of seems that people are pretty nihilistic these days. At least, I don't know. Like people who are just probably think that. I do know some people who have just they believe they've accepted the fact that everyone's going to get sick and die.
Yeah.
But so So what were we talking about? We were talking about So if we haven't seen Bitcoin exist in a bear market yet, in a bear economy, I should say, we haven't seen what it does when the world economy is in a crisis, because its entire life has been in a booming and growing economy. 2017, that giant bull run all the way up to $20,000 for Bitcoin was at a peak. It was at an all-time high for the New York Stock Exchange. So people had a lot of money to buy Bitcoin. People had a lot of money to risk. And now people won't have money to risk. And if Bitcoin is an escape hatch, I think that it probably could still be an asset that grows in value, but I don't really think that it's going to have these massive cycles to it. I mean, it kind of seems like something that should have just kind of slowly grew in value over time, and like that's probably where it should be right now. It probably should be worth about $3,000 right now, right? It's like. That seems to be right.
Everybody
the amount
says,
of people and talk about
it.
And,
everybody who's smart about it says in the beginning an asset is really volatile, and then as more people get into it, it becomes less volatile.
Unless it's manipulated all to hell. Yeah.
Yeah, but at a certain point, the more people that are in it, the harder it is to manipulate.
Yeah, but there's still not enough people in Bitcoin. It's still small.
No,
I mean, if gold can be manipulated, then then we're gonna have a problem with Bitcoin. So yeah, so it's going to be manipulated, so it's going to have all these spikes, but hodlers hodling from when it was $20 or whatever, hodling on the belief that this is going to be necessary one day when money doesn't exist anymore, or when money is valueless, or when the world economy collapses and we need some way to exchange for goods and services, then this is going to be an important thing. And I think that's a good thing to hodl Bitcoin for, personally.
Sure. I mean, if you were an early adopter and you've got 1,000 or 100 or something like that, yeah, great.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still in a situation where it's just like,
I wonder how this is going to affect.
If we have an apocalypse, we're not going to have digital devices, and Bitcoin is going to be useless. It's the mentality of people right now. They're like, oh, we need to pull all of our cash. And do what? You're stuck in your house. What are you going to do with $10,000 in cash?
Get robbed.
Everything you need right now, you're buying online, more or less. People don't want to touch your fucking dirty money. Nobody at the grocery store wants to collect cash from you.
Yeah.
It's hard enough for them to like be within 6 feet of you. Like they want
Gosh.
you to use your credit card so they don't have to touch you and talk to you or be too close to you.
Yeah, man.
But
the
this idea, like everyone's buying everything on Target or Amazon or Walmart, and having stuff shipped to them. You can't do that with cash. So I don't really understand this idea of like, oh, we need to pull out all of our money and bank runs, and it's like, okay,
So
that
there's a
that doesn't make
rumor.
sense.
There's a rumor that there's a run on the banks because people panic and they think, oh, the banks are going to collapse, so I should get my money out. And that's happened before in other countries. I mean, it's when the bank has no more money. That's a scary idea. I was actually in Iceland when it happened in 2008. And
Yeah.
and it was well, actually, here, let me talk about what happened in Iceland that night. Well, I arrived in Iceland and we had heard that there was some economic thing. Now, I didn't care about economics at all back then. I didn't care about money, really. I was a traveling musician, so I was there to play. I was there to perform. And we heard that there was some crisis and that people's credit cards weren't working or their debit cards weren't working. And the entire city of Reykjavik that night basically just got shit-faced, and bars were giving away alcohol for free. Some bars were giving away alcohol for free because there were just tons of people there to drink. I mean, it was just like people were drinking. Now, like that's there were still people like buying things. There were people who had cash. And if I remember right, there most people were using cards. Like my card still worked there, but this is also a place where things are extremely expensive. It's a really it's an expensive city, Reykjavik. I mean, yeah, I remember looking for like a jacket because it was freezing cold, and it was like $600 or something for a jacket. But I remember that happening, and I remember that people didn't seem that scared. They were just kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen, so we might as well party. That was their attitude, which for a country that's as well-to-do as Iceland, I guess that can happen. For some place like the U.S., where you've got a bunch of people who don't even have documents, or people that live on the streets, or I can't even imagine what that would be like if credit cards stop working. So it's a very scary thing, but we have to remember that like you said, if we don't have trust in the banks, then unfortunately, yeah, what are you going to do? Hoard cash? You're going to try to pay for your groceries with cash? We better do everything we can to make sure the banks actually continue working. Even if you hate the banks and you hate the SIM system, and I don't like the system at all. I don't like the system that we built. But we're going to be way worse off if we can't use our debit cards to buy stuff. That's going to be...
Or a credit card.
Or a credit card or whatever. But that would be a very scary thing. That's when people would start looting, I think. Like they would have to. They would have no choice. So if you...
Crypto Euclid has been very dark on Twitter this week.
Yeah, he's got a dark side, doesn't he?
And he's been making pronouncements that he thinks that rioting is going to start in 2 weeks. He's like, I'm not advocating for it, but I just have a feeling that in the next 2 weeks, shit's going to hit the fan.
Unless governments, either local or national governments, can do something to help people who need stuff. Like, eventually people are going to need food. I kind of believe that. I think that if people don't get what they need, they're not going to have a choice. They're not going to have a choice, and then they're going to turn into mobs. The only time I ever saw looting and rioting in my life, like full on legit, was the LA riots, the Rodney King riots in LA when I was a kid. I was I think I was in 6th grade at the time, and it was terrifying because like overnight the city was turned into like a post-apocalyptic place. Now, for the most part, it was business as usual. It wasn't like people just went out like crazy and like looted everything they could find. Like there were some parts of LA that happened in, but no, what ended up happening is I think there would be like factions of looters that would get together and they'd say, okay, we're going to take out that Tower Records. to be back in the 90s. We're going to take out that.
Yeah, but it didn't happen like on Sunset. It was only happening in really poor neighborhoods.
No, it was happening. Well, it would be like you drive down a street. It was like in the suburbs, basically. You drive down a street and everything would be business as usual. And then you passed by this one store that had all the windows smashed out. And sometimes they were really weird stores, like the discount clothing store got looted and you'd have to be like, oh man, that sucks. They got it.
Yeah.
And so it would be like, even in nice neighborhoods in like, North Hollywood, they had the same thing. It would be like, there'd be like that one store, like that one Circuit City or whatever.
I love that you're saying North Hollywood's a nice neighborhood.
Well, yeah, there's parts of Ventura Boulevard that are pretty nice, but, back then, this was like practically the 80s, so it was still kind of nice.
Yeah. Okay.
But
it took a major turn for the worse.
Yeah, no. Toluca Lake, Valley Girls from North Hollywood. Encino, let's say Encino. Parts of Encino and Reseda. But no, my point is that it wasn't like chaos. I mean, there was chaos the day of the ruling, that's for sure. That's when the riots broke out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't chaos after that. In fact, it was just this kind of, it was a controlled mob mentality where people would, I guess, I don't know exactly what they did because I was a kid at the time, but all I know is that there were stores that had all the windows smashed out and they were definitely targeted. And that's probably what will happen here if there are riots and looting. It's not like people are
but it's what happens is they go after, so I was in high school when it happened, and we were actually driving up there for school, and the bus had to stop and turn around, and because they were shooting at buses on the street, on the freeway. There's somebody up there, and so we couldn't go there.
From San Diego, right?
Yeah, from San Diego to LA, and the majority of it happened in poor neighborhoods in Koreatown, like working class, blue collar, lower income neighborhoods.
Yeah, it wasn't Bel Air. You're right.
Yeah. And so, that's historically where it happens, which it doesn't, from a logic standpoint, like, what are you doing stealing from poor people? Like, why?
Oh no, that goes out the window, man. It would be like,
yeah,
like I said,
no logic.
It would be, and it wasn't even like stores that had vital essential things. No, it would be like the place with the big screen TVs in the window. Let's go after that place. Yeah. Now, if it happened today, people would obviously need to get food, so they'd go after grocery stores. Just last night, I went to the liquor store because I wanted to buy Everclear because you can't get rubbing alcohol anywhere, if you need to clean stuff. So I go to the liquor store to get Everclear because it's just as strong. But when I went there, the guy had the entire place barred up. You had to like stand at the window and knock. I wasn't going to knock because I don't want to touch anything. But he has to come to the window and he's wearing a full mask and he's like saying like, what do you want? And I told him what I want. But he's ready. He's ready for that to happen there. Yeah. He's been told by the owner, like, we are a prime target for we have food and we have water here. So be ready in case people need that. So I mean, and if this happens, it happens in San Francisco, or it happens in the East Bay or in LA, people are probably going to need to get what they need. People aren't just going to starve.
Yeah. But it's that other thing of like, they don't need to get water because all the taps still work. So like, there's not going to be a run on, that's the thing. Like I went to the grocery store and there was a run on water. And I needed to buy distilled water for something I was doing for a neti pot. And it's like, okay, well, why is there a run on water? I understand that you need to have. I think what I think everyone realizes is like, oh shit, we live in earthquake central, and none of us have any supplies if an earthquake hits. Mm-hmm. And so when this happened, they're like, oh shit, we need to be prepared for an earthquake. And so they went out and bottled this water. I haven't heard of any runs on water anywhere else outside of LA, like outside of Southern California. Yeah, man, I don't know how it was up in San Fran.
I think that, there was a run on water for sure. Well, people are just going after the essentials. They're told by their friends and relatives, go get the essentials. Now, they're probably not thinking, I don't know what they're thinking actually, but I mean, yeah, the water services will probably not stop running. That probably won't happen. Hopefully not. Hopefully not everybody at the water plant gets sick, you know?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's not that type of disease where people are. I mean, it is. It's bad, but it's not like Ebola or something like that, where you can't go within inches
Right.
of somebody or
No, I think the only...
like.
yeah, go ahead. What? Sorry.
Well, I mean, just like you get. It's not that difficult to keep, life-saving services going, like water, electricity,
Yeah.
those kind of things. You can do it with a skeleton crew, and you just have them, in proper PPE gear.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like hospital gear. I'm talking about like working on an oil rig gear, like that I had to wear when I was working in the oil fields.
Right. I think people are
like-
just like, they go into panic mode and they think, well, if I can't live without water, and if the water gets turned off for some reason. And here's the thing. It's like, okay, here's a paranoid thought. And unfortunately, this is actually a sad truth. I don't mean to freak anybody out, but if you have plumbing issues, this is a really bad time to have them. So like any sort of service where you need like someone to come to your house to fix things, it's not a good time for that. So I can sort of see, if I really think hard enough, like, oh man, if the plumbing breaks, I probably want some clean water. But in that case, it's like, okay, well there will be places for me to get clean water. It's not like just because I can't get it out of my sink. But I think that some people are kind of thinking about if service is shut down. I know that that's a scary thought. But I think in general, people aren't thinking about that. They're just thinking, I need the essentials. Oh, let's go get toilet paper. Everybody's getting toilet paper. Let's get toilet paper. Yeah.
Which is just, but that's the thing. Like that, people were talking about it, and it's just like, stop hoarding. And it's an American thing. It's this every person for themselves mentality, and it's like I said, it's childish. It's sad and it's childish. You don't see this in Europe. Europeans and everywhere else that they're looking at, it's like, what are these people's problems?
Yeah, it's so. I mean, this system that we built. I didn't really want to talk too much about this, but we have this precious system, this house of cards that we've created that allows everybody to go out and compete for as much money as possible. That's your job in life. Go out and get money. Go out and get as much money as possible. Get more money than your friends. Get more money than your family. Definitely get more money than your family. In fact, we'll even set up a system where, you don't have to worry about your kids. You don't have to worry. You don't have to raise your kids. We'll do it for you. Just go out and get money. And yeah, that's the goal. And when we have a crisis like this, and everybody's families have to be in one place together, and people are freaking out I see Facebook, people are like, really like, what do I do? I've had my kids in my house for a week straight, for 2 weeks straight. It's like, man, isn't it sad that we're in a world where you're like terrorized by your children because you don't raise them in this world. Somebody else raises your kids.
What's even worse is that we live in a society where people are like mad that they have to be around their kids for a week.
It's messed up. And
other cultures, they specifically take vacations so they can spend time with their kids.
Now, I don't mean to be insensitive, because I know it must be hard if you're used to a particular lifestyle where you're not around your kids all the time, to all of a sudden be dropped into this role of having to be both a teacher and a parent, a babysitter, whatever it is there's a lot of things that parents do, and it's probably very difficult to be a parent. I'm not one, so I don't know. But I do think it's kind of sad that we created this system that made it so that it's hard to be around your kids for a long period of time. I think that's really weird. But to be around,
well, and to be fair, when you and I were kids, we were allowed, our parents would just kick us out of the house and say, go play for 5 hours outside. And
Right.
they wouldn't know where we were.
Yeah.
And so, so granted,
You
it
can't
is
do that
different.
now.
They can't,
That's true.
people can't send their kids out right now.
You can't
Some people are, like you said,
can't-
you're seeing kids at a park.
You can't send your kids to get out to get raised by the wolves, basically, which is
Yeah.
how we were raised by wolves. No, I mean that's
turned
true.
out
Like,
okay.
what do you do? I don't know about I don't know about you, but I turned out crazy. Well, like here's the thing. So when in other cultures, in other communities and societies, like it's probably a very fascinating thing to spend your entire life studying, but it's like, who raises the kids? Is it the parents? Is it the families? Is it the villages? Is it the schools? Is it their peers? Is it like, there's all of these things, and there's probably no right answer for who's doing it best. All I know is that, like, in this country, maybe it works really well for a lot of people, but I know it doesn't work well for a lot of people. And it definitely doesn't work well whenever there's a crisis. It doesn't work well whenever something like this happens. There are some very good schools in California, and I don't mean there are good private schools that you can pay a lot of money for. I mean, there's public schools that actually teach some pretty progressive things, and I know that they're good because the kids generally like going to school. So I think when you and I were kids, I don't know about you, but everybody hated school. It was more like prison than it was like fun. Michael, you there?
Junior high was like that. High school was amazing.
High school was amazing. Yeah. Really. Okay, so I did not like high school. I mean, it wasn't too bad to be there because I went to a high school that was all right. But elementary school, junior high school, like prison. And living in LA, we also had the like gang epidemic. I mean, that was a real concern. Is that there were drive-by shootings at schools for some reason. It's like there was poverty that led to crime, and that came out as violence and racism in the form of gangs. And of course, the way that people were incarcerated made that so much worse, because then you were sending people to prison or sending them to juvie, and then they were coming back out with their grudges and everything and taking them back to school, So that was really messed up for the way I grew up. So the fact that there are schools now that students like going to and they like being at, hopefully that can continue. But man, still, it does seem kind of crazy that this, it's, I don't know what do you call that society that just packs on so many different things, like so many different facets and moving parts that rely on, your life relies on this job, that relies on this system, that relies on this market, that relies on this, thing, that relies on this
peak capitalism.
This relies on this insurance company. This insurance company relies on this bank. This bank relies on this one politician. It's called
House of Cards.
It is
it's a house of cards.
Man.
We get it. And the whole reason why Western Europe handles things better than us is because they have social safety nets and we don't. And so if they lose their job, it's no big deal. You have your health care. If you whatever, if you break your leg, it's no big deal. You've got, welfare that you can get, so you can get paid for 6 months and while it heals, and then you go back to work, and it's just like, it's no big deal. But we do everything like shoestring. So we do the bare minimum so the rich people can make as much money as they possibly can. And we've kind of hit the peak. It was an experiment that started in the 70s, and the 80s and 90s. It just got kind of worse and worse and worse. It peaked in 2008, and then this was kind of the dead cat bounce. And I think 2008 to 2020 was the dead cat bounce, and I think people are just kind of sick of it. Because it's the whole George W. Bush thing. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, won't get fooled again. However he said it.
I think he said, yeah.
Won't get fooled again.
Fool me. What an idiot.
So,
It's a great quote.
but that, it's the whole thing is like we have people realizing like, oh shit, we really have no social safety net. Oh shit, having our healthcare tied to our jobs, that's gonna be a complete disaster come 1 month from now when everybody gets switched over to Cobra and pays 300% more for their healthcare than they were paying.
Yeah.
Because they were getting it through their job. They weren't paying anything, technically. They were getting less, they weren't getting those salary raises because that was going to healthcare instead. But now they have to pay for their own healthcare, and to get the same quality healthcare, it's going to be like $600 to $1,000 a month. And no one's going to be able to pay for that. So then no one's going to have healthcare. And it's just like this idea of like, all this stuff is gonna become aware. Like people are gonna become aware of it now, and you can say you don't like government all you want, but now's your chance to actually participate and talk to your congressperson, talk to your senator, and make sure that they start, taking your considerations into account when they're voting on bills. And then if they don't vote the way that is helpful for you and everybody around you, then get them the fuck out of there. This idea that like your vote doesn't matter, you can say that with presidential races because of the Electoral College, and it's kind of rough. But you cannot say that about local politics. You can't say that about your senator, your House of Representative, your mayor, all that stuff. Your vote actually counts.
It counts for a lot, yeah.
So now's your chance.
You think that there's hope then? You think that we could actually possibly repair some of what we've got?
There's always hope. That's the thing. There's always hope.
We wouldn't have to if this virus is bad, like we could basically be slide into a recession where the country kind of needs to be rebuilt. And I'm worried that
here's the thing. I don't think we're going to have a recession. I think we're going to have a full-blown depression, and it's going to have to be rebuilt.
Oh, man. That sucks, man. Not fair.
Yeah.
Man, in my lifetime. Hopefully we still have things like doctors that can, see us if we break our arms.
That's the thing. Like doctors aren't leaving. Hospitals aren't going to like get bulldozed to the ground. All that stuff's going to be there. They're just going to have to, we're going to have to figure out a way to make sure that doctors get enough money so they can survive and feed their families and so that kind of stuff. So we have to figure out, how do we pay them?
That's the thing that I think is just.
And do we need to pay an insurance company to go see the doctor anymore? No, that's stupid.
Well,
why are we spending? Why is 40% of the money we spend on healthcare going to an insurance company instead of to the service?
But that's
dumb.
That's the thing that I think is going to be really hard to change. Just to like convince people are so used to insurance companies being middlemen and everything. So it's like we have to completely strip that out. I don't see that happening. I mean, at least
we do it with Medicare. We do it with we do it with a bunch of different things. We do it with school. We don't have a somebody in between going to school. We just go directly to school, and the government pays for it.
Yeah, imagine.
But the government pays for it with our tax dollars, so we're paying for it. We're the ones paying for it. There's no such thing as government. Government is just us.
Yeah, and even that.
So if you don't like government, if you think somebody's stealing from you, then it's your job to tell them to stop stealing, because the government isn't stealing your money. It's shady people that you elected are stealing your money.
Yep.
So it's funny that all the conservatives who say guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, governments don't steal from you, people steal from you. The government's just a car, like anything else. If the car is going in the wrong direction, you don't blame the car, you blame the person behind the wheel steering it.
But when it's systematic, I think it is hard. I mean, when that's why I think say voting for top government positions that's when there's so much money in politics. Like how do you fight that? It's really hard because it's not just a matter of voting people out. You're like, it's like David and Goliath.
Money in politics doesn't really matter.
You think
it's
so?
just being conscious. No, yeah, because we've proven that even with the Koch brothers fighting for the last 10 years to get every single one of their candidates in, they lost almost every single race. Mm-hmm. Because over the last 10 years, people have been aware.
I think the Democratic
Party
Party
they know about the Koch brothers.
The Democratic Party, I think, unfortunately, is too influenced by donors.
No, it absolutely is. But once people start to realize it, they'll start picking people, or they'll just stop voting Democrat, and the Democrats will have to completely restructure themselves from the
I hope that happens,
bottom
but we
up.
haven't seen that yet. I mean, right now, Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee. That's
Yeah, but it's hard to expect. I mean,
I don't know.
we're not at a stage of fear yet. Most white people aren't really afraid of Donald Trump
Oh, I see. So he's got to pull out
because
the dictator
it's
card.
not really affecting them, right? Especially most white men.
Right.
It's just all virtue signaling for them. For white men, Donald Trump is just virtue signaling because there is not a single thing that Donald Trump has done outside of tax breaks for the rich that really affect white men all that much. So, white women, and even white women, half of them don't care. Half of them still voted for Trump. They don't care about abortion and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, and then
And so,
I don't know. Even that is fucking like most people in this country didn't actually vote for Trump. We've got a messed up electoral college. We don't really need to go into that, but that's, I mean, all of this stuff.
yeah, 24% of the voting population voted for Trump. That was it.
That is a system that needs to be gutted, and I just don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, maybe a depression where everything gets to be rebuilt, but man, there's just too much garbage.
That
to throw
wouldn't
out.
change the voting system. You got to have something drastic happen.
Gotta have something
That's the thing,
drastic.
like once you have once you have the majority of the people in absolute fear, that's when things will change.
I guess so. It's sad that it would come to that if you think that's the way it would be. Hopefully we get to that.
Well, it's just human nature.
Hopefully we get to that
that's
fear
what history's
sooner
shown
than
us.
later.
Yeah.
It would have been nice.
But I mean, every revolution, they had to hit rock bottom before the revolution started. Revolutions don't start when people are happy and drinking their Starbucks every single day because they can afford Starbucks every day. Revolutions don't happen that way. So it has to hit rock bottom before enough people are scared and angry and frustrated and pissed off and broke and,
I just don't think that most people even see the money in politics. They don't even think about that. But yeah, hopefully it happens soon.
like I said, when you're conscious of it, it doesn't matter how much money is against you because you realize that your vote actually matters, especially in local politics.
All right. Well, that's an hour and 8 minutes. It's a pretty good show. Got a lot of stuff off our chest.
Really dark episode.
It wasn't too bad. Maybe we left on some hope, There's hope. like maybe some dentists will hang around to fix your toothaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's think of something hopeful. Oh, isn't it nice to be able to hang out with your family?
Not for most people, apparently.
Oh, man, but well, this crisis is going to bring people together, make people work together, just like every crisis. All right, guys, that's a show. Good luck out there and stay safe. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay 6 feet away from people, and
don't talk to strangers.
You can talk to them, just be 6 feet away because they might spit on you.
Yeah,
because they're assholes.
Nice.